Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this month's Foundations Live. I'm Paul Smith, we're Foundations, and very good to see you this afternoon. So this month's Foundations Live is a charity special, so I'm very pleased that we've got Janet Wood from WeWeed, who will join us in a few moments, Claire Donovan from the End Furniture Poverty Charity, and Alan Walker from Men's Shed. So we'll be hearing from Janet, then Claire, then Alan as we move through the afternoon.
Foundations Live!
Right, just before we start, as always, just a few bits of admin to go through. So we're Foundations, which is the national body for home improvement agencies and disabled facilities grants. We're funded by the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, support with the delivery of disabled facilities grants and home adaptations. And if you after closed captions, they're available on social media, where we stream on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and on YouTube. So just before we get going, for those of you who've joined us today, very pleased to announce that we've just launched the tickets for our annual summit, our annual DFG summit. And this year we're going to be talking about high cost adaptations and various ways to look at high cost adaptations and various solutions to making the work better. So we'll be in central Birmingham, almost literally within a stone's throw of New Street Station on the 8th of July. We've got kind of a packed agenda, as I looking at how to deal with high cost adaptations in a, I suppose, kind of a more joined up and more outcome focused way. For those that you don't know, the government is currently reviewing the upper limit for DFGs and should have announced the what will happen as part of that in the spending review, which is due to be announced in June. So this event will follow shortly after on the start of July. And tickets have literally just gone on sale, and early bird tickets are available now at a discount. So if you're interested in joining us in Birmingham on the 8th of July to spend a day looking at how to do high cost adaptations better, so those are kind of DFG type cases that cost well in excess of 30,000, we'll spend a day discussing that on the 8th of July. Right. So as I said, today is a look at various different charities that work in and around and I suppose with this kind of similar cohort of people potentially to kind of home improvement agencies and those of you involved with DFGs. So first of all, I'm going to welcome Janet from an organisation called WeWeed, which I suppose, as it says on the tin, is about people who go out and weed gardens. So I'll add your presentation to the stage, Janet, and start. And over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Paul. Thank you for having me, and hello to everyone. Yes, WeWeed. People ask me about the name, why it's called that for quite a lot, and it basically, just because it started with me, I just needed a name and that was fun and that was available as a domain name, and that's why it's called WeWeed. But anyway, let me tell you a bit about what it actually is. So it's a trades directory basically, but it is for mainly women gardeners. We do not exclude men from the directory, but it is primarily to support women to become self-employed gardeners and companion gardeners as well, which I'll tell you more about what that is in a bit. So there's a picture there of the page of the website where you can go and find a gardener geographically. So each gardener has their own profile and that will tell the person who's looking for a gardener their skills, knowledge, pictures of the gardens that they've done. They are essentially they're free mini websites that people can showcase their services on. We support women into becoming self-employed gardeners, and the reason we support women, I'll explain a bit in a minute. Companion gardeners, again, I'll explain that in the next slide. We champion more inclusive ways of learning about horticulture because there are some barriers into it. And we motivate better health in second careers, especially for women over 40. Okay, next slide. Okay, so it started because I've got another business, a hospitality business, and in COVID, it got mothballed. It just shut in a day, and I thought, oh my God, how am I going to get some money? Because I didn't think it would ever come back, you know. So I thought, well, I wonder if I can, I might just help people with a bit of weeding or something like that, because I've got an allotment, and I didn't really know a huge amount about gardening. I just had the allotment so I could grow vegetables, and that was about it, really. And so there was a before and after picture on here. That's the after picture of my allotment. The one before it was just some mud, basically, but the animations don't work on this platform. But at least it's stuck on the one that was after, not the one before. And so I put the pictures of before and afters on a Facebook, local Facebook groups, and said, does anybody want a hand? You know, not unpaid, but does anybody want a hand in their garden? And my gosh, people definitely did. And my first customer was a mum of a lady who lived quite far away. And she said, my mum's got dementia. She's always loved her garden. She's brilliant at gardening, but she's getting confused now. She really needs some help. And I said, gosh, I don't really know very much. And she went, no, you know enough. You've got your pictures look nice. you just need some passion and some company. So that's how it started. And I was amazed at the need for people to do this. And I had lots more inquiries as well from people who were older, who couldn't manage their gardens anymore. And that companionship. And what happened was that I learned from these people who had managed their gardens for many, many years, beautiful plants in, and they knew how to garden, they knew how to look after these plants. I didn't. So I learned from them, but in return, I'd give them company and physical help. And so then I needed help because I couldn't manage it on my own anymore. So then Justine came along. She's in that picture next to me. And then, so she started to do some weeding, and then she started to do more stuff. Now she's actually a designer, a border designer. So she went as a second career from an antiques dealer that the bottom fell out of. There's no more money in antiques anymore, to doing a bit of weeding. And now she designs gardens. It's incredible. So from there, just keeping on time, we realised that we needed more of us. So there became 8 of us, actually, in Henley, where I live, but still more inquiries, and I just couldn't manage it as it was anymore. So we thought, okay, well, how can we expand, but not have to manage every single person? So we developed a website, basically a directory, where everybody would have their own profiles to say what they could do and what they were available to do, and if they were companion gardeners or if they were able to do something more, like putting up fences. And so that's how it started. But we came across some surprising issues, and one was a lack of confidence in women, just to go out there on their own and just start up as I did. They wanted their hand held. They were worried about not having enough qualifications. I don't have any qualifications, and nor does Justine. RHS, a lot of people think that the RHS, which is Royal Horticultural Society, they run a lot of courses, but they are sometimes a barrier into entry, because you have to be able to learn in that way. You have to be good at absorbing Latin names and retaining them, and not everybody learns like that. I certainly can't. So what we had to do is find ways to support women to becoming companion gardeners, because there's such a need for people to have support in their gardens. They don't have to move house. So we now do that by running workshops, online workshops for how to set up as a self-employed gardener. And we have WhatsApp groups that we've got horticulturalists on there. So if somebody doesn't know something, they can just ask a question. And that will be answered, or put a picture of a sick plant up or whatever, and somebody say, oh, it's this, you need to do this. And the other barrier is IT illiteracy. Even now, we have women who are only in their 40s and 50s who really struggle with technology, really struggle writing a profile. And that was a big shock to me, actually, how many people really struggle with that kind of basic communication in reading and writing. So we have to support them in that as well. So getting a user-friendly platform has been a challenge, and actually we need something more robust now. And we need an app really to make that even more easier for people to use. And so this is kind of where we are now, really. I've just been going a couple of years, so and I've got another business, so this is kind of we try to run both alongside each other. So we've got 700 registered garden owners on the site at the moment, looking for gardeners, and 400 registered gardeners on the site. It's free to use. It's free to use for garden owners. It's free to use for gardeners. There's a messaging feature so they can receive inquiries and send out responses for no fee whatsoever. I don't think there's any other trades platform that allows that. Over 20% of them are paid subscribers. So they pay a small amount, $4.95 a month, which means that they can put their emails and stuff up there. And that basically just goes to maintaining the site, and hopefully we'll have enough to be able to afford an app and some national marketing, because we don't have those funds at the moment. So that's our aim, really. There was last year 160,000 professional gardeners in the UK. Only 17% of them are women. So that our aim is to obviously get more women into becoming professional and companionship gardeners to support older people in their gardens, but also we're looking for partnerships and support to help us expand our reach, and that's us. Thanks.
Thank you, Jan. So where do you see kind of or what are your kind of ambitions for WeWeed in the future then? Do you kind of have targets in terms of how many people you want to help, or how many gardeners?
Yeah, I mean, we'd love thousands to be on the site. We need thousands to be on the site, and we haven't quite got it to that critical mass yet. We're not actually a registered charity, but I am thinking that maybe I should have actually set it up as a registered charity, because it kind of is, but not in the way most registered charities are. So yeah, it's very expensive to build apps, and to compete with the likes of Checker Trade and those kind of big guys. So we're just gradually trying to find ways to reach out to people in horticulture, and slowly expand our reach.
And what are your kind of favourite stories in terms of kind of people that have been helped by WeWeed? There must be some great kind of anecdotes or kind of case studies that you've developed.
Yeah, we do have a lot of women who have signed up for second careers, and for lots of different reasons. We have a lot of women from the NHS, from the teaching profession, and from corporate burnout as well. We have some women who have come from domestic abuse marriages, and they've found that working alongside another gardener locally builds up their confidence. Being outside is, we all know is really beneficial for mental health. So having a job that helps your own physical and mental well-being is huge.
And in terms of the people who've kind of received the gardening service, are there kind of any stories that come to mind in terms of the benefit for them, and maybe they haven't wanted to use gardeners before? Or
Yes, I mean, it's people who live on their own. It's a real lifeline because there's two reasons. One, because they've got a company and there's somebody coming in every single week. And it's not their grown-up children telling them that they should downsize, move into a home. Have they taken their medication? It's about sharing something that is mutual, that's fun, that's nice. And also, when you work side by side with somebody who's a bit vulnerable, it's non-confrontational because you're side by side and you're weeding, you're doing something together, and people tend to open up then, because it's non-confrontational. So if they are struggling with loneliness, or they're not feeling very well, or they've got frustrations, it starts to come out. So yeah, it's hugely beneficial.
Kind of Martin was asking, I guess, kind of a question on a similar vein. So in terms of kind of trusting female gardeners more than male gardeners, have you kind of seen elements of that kind of people have welcomed?
Yeah, there's two. The thing is, people think gardeners are just this one thing, and these gardeners do hedge cutting and lawn mowing, and people when you think of a gardener, you think of a male gardener with hedge cutter, and they tend to just come in and just cut everything down or cut into round balls, and then they're off, and they might come back and they might not. So women gardeners tend to do the smaller things, the beds and the borders and the things that male gardeners generally don't want to do unless they're horticulturalists. So there's a place for all of us, and that is why the website is not just for women, because we need all kinds of gardeners. But generally, if people like say 35-year-olds with families, 35, 40 with families, they're busy and they just want a lawn cut generally. But women on their own, and older people feel more vulnerable, so they feel safer with women in their gardens, basically.
Okay. And Sandra was asking, so typical charges for helping people in their garden?
So the average rate for a gardener, like a professional gardener, is about £27 an hour. But what we say is, because we need companion gardeners, it's really important that we get more companion gardeners. So anybody can do that, as long as they've got happy with the outdoors and they can do a bit of weeding and they can listen to their senior garden owner. You can start on £15 an hour, really. And then generally you sort of build up your skills and knowledge, and then you might sort of move on to bigger gardens. The idea with We Weed is that once a gardener becomes more experienced, they can then hand over that garden to somebody who again is less experienced, and then you've got that consistency of people managing your garden rather than them just leaving, which is what happens.
Okay. So if people are interested, have you got the link again to your website, Janet, so that people can is it so
it's weweed.co.uk. So it's weweed.co.uk.
Great. So that's either if people are or can know people who want to be a gardener, and for people who want a gardener themselves.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, thank you for joining us, Janice. If there may be some more questions that appear in the comments. So if you're kind of happy to hand around, Dan's put the link in the chat there for anybody who needs it. But thank you for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Foundations Live.
Right. So that was Janet from We Weed, and now we're going to move on to, if I find the right button, onto the end furniture.
Foundations Live.
So, welcome, Claire.
Thank you,
So,
Paul. Good to be here.
for those that have kind of been watching our webinars for a little while, Claire was one of our kind of lockdown guests, which must have been going on for 5 years ago when we kind of first started on the webinar. So we thought it was a good time to kind of get Claire back and get an update. So have you got your presentation there ready to go, Claire? And I'll add that to the screen. There we go. So there we go. Over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Well, yes, thanks for having me here today. So I'm here today to talk about our work, to talk a bit about furniture poverty in general, and some insight into some of the ways you can support people to move out of furniture poverty. So I head up End Furniture Poverty, just a bit about who we are. We're the campaigning arm of a much bigger group of charities called FRC Group, which was founded over 35 years ago. And End Furniture Poverty is here to raise awareness of furniture poverty, but also to campaign for national solutions. At the moment, we're very much focusing on the provision of furnished tenancies in social housing and adequately funded local welfare schemes, which is local authority discretionary crisis support. On the slide here, you can see our definition of furniture poverty: the inability to afford or access basic furniture, appliances and furnishings that provide a household with a socially acceptable standard of living. So we include appliances and floor and window coverings in that definition. And there's a full list of the essential items on our website, but it's the items you'd expect, from sofas and beds to cookers and fridges. Furniture poverty is a continuum, so there are varying degrees, from furniture insecurity at one end through to furniture destitution, where someone has few or none of the basic items that they need. Typically, this could be someone fleeing domestic abuse or coming from homelessness or moving out of temporary accommodation. And too many of these people are being moved into empty boxes. So we published a report, to be honest, it was a couple of years ago now, and it showed that at least 6 million people, 9% of the UK population, live in furniture poverty. And that includes 26% of social housing tenants. And over 1 million adults are living in what we're calling deep furniture poverty, where they're living without 3 or more essential items. And that includes 8% of social housing tenants. And a final stark figure there, at least 740,000 children in the UK living without a bed of their own to sleep in. And it's clear the number of people living in furniture poverty will have risen even higher during the cost of living crisis, because if food bank usage is rising, furniture poverty is rising, because if you can't afford food, how on earth can you afford to replace a broken cooker? For those on low incomes, furniture and white goods are likely to be some of the most expensive items that they need to buy, and trying to do so can mean people abandon social tenancies to return to furnished properties in the private rental sector, or people turn to debt to acquire items, which can often be high cost credit or even doorstep lenders or loan sharks. This can all leave them unable to pay their rent, leading to rental arrears and tenancy failure, leaving them unable to afford food, or it just means people live without beds, cookers and fridges. And here are some of the health impacts: living without a bed, unable to get a good night's sleep; living without a cooker or a fridge, unable to store and prepare fresh food or store medication. And furniture poverty also affects your mental health and your social and financial well-being. You're far less likely to invite someone into your home if you haven't got a sofa for them to sit on. All of these findings are part of the secondary survey of that extension furniture poverty research, and it's all on our website. As you can see, the impacts are really severe. And as furniture poverty is rising, these problems are increasing with all the associated costs to the public purse, on the NHS, on social care and more, plus, of course, the personal toll on people's lives. So at the end of the day, furniture poverty is about poverty. It's about people not having enough money to meet their basic needs. And as we all know, everything's become so much harder, not just for those living on the low incomes, but for those who are trying to help them, who are trying to support them and trying to make limited budgets stretch much further. I'll talk about furnished tenancies shortly, but starting with local welfare schemes. As I said, these are local authority discretionary crisis support. Lots of local authorities have different names for them. They can be ideal for people who need 1 or 2 furniture items. They provide support for food and fuel, and typically furniture and appliances. We publish a report every year looking at the state of play for local welfare across the UK. We do a freedom of information request to every local authority. Our last report found that 36 English local authorities have closed their local welfare assistance scheme, and that's left over 15 million people in England without access to local welfare. We also found that the majority of local welfare funding is now coming from the Household Support Fund, and we know that 1 in 5 local authorities face significant financial difficulties, and because local welfare is not a statutory service, it's under serious threat. The Household Support Fund has been extended to March 2026, which is great, and we're very grateful. Without it, we think local welfare would have vanished across over half of England, but we really do need a long-term solution. We've got a report coming out in a few days that we've written with the Children's Society, Trussell Trust, Joseph Rowntree Foundation and others, which looks at what the long-term future for local authority crisis support should be. We've got a meeting with the DWP tomorrow to discuss it. And just to be clear, the report looks at all of the nations, but England is the one with the most that faces the most difficulties. In Scotland, it's a statutory service, it's centrally run, and in Wales and Northern Ireland, it's centrally run. All of those schemes are far better funded than the support that's available in England. We've published a cost-benefit analysis report to demonstrate to the DWP the value of crisis support, and it demonstrates the significant benefits that these schemes bring to the local authority and beyond. So every pound invested in local welfare, we found, has a return of around £11.50 to the local authority and returns over £15 across the public purse. So it's a really significant return on investment, and that report's on our website as well. Furniture reuse schemes are very, very important. I'm a trustee of the reuse network, so I'm a passionate advocate for reuse. But we do have to be realistic about the quality and quantity of furniture available through reuse, and all of the challenges around safety, pat testing, fire labels, the cost of logistics and cleaning. It's not a free option. Many of the grant-making charities who provide support with furniture and appliances with absolutely battered during COVID and then the cost of living crisis. Some have closed, some are limiting their offer due to geography or in other ways. And furniture gifting schemes, some housing associations, for example, have furniture gifting schemes, really, really important, but reliant on shrinking budgets. So the routes out of furniture poverty are very challenging, and they are becoming much harder to navigate. We believe a blended approach is the solution. So furnished tenancies for those who are on benefits and likely to remain on benefits for at least short to medium term. And then reuse and gifting schemes for those who just need perhaps 1 or 2 items. So on to social housing. It's standard practice in the social housing sector for properties to be allocated as unfurnished, which means no furniture, no appliances, and usually no floor or window coverings either. Only 2% of social homes are provided as furnished compared to 29% in the private rental sector. And for many tenants, that's fine. That's what they want. They've already acquired their furniture and appliances. But for some, particularly some of those groups I mentioned earlier, those fleeing domestic abuse, coming from homelessness, or even moving from the private rental sector where the property may have been furnished, they can have absolutely nothing. And that creates huge challenges for the start of a new tenants. We believe at least 10% of social housing tenants would really benefit from a furnished tenancy scheme. And for us, a furnished tenancy scheme means offering people a choice of all of those essential items. So a bed, bedroom storage, like a wardrobe, chest of drawers, sofa, table and chairs, cooker, fridge, freezer, and washing machine. They might not need all of those items, so they shouldn't have to take them all, but they should be offered them all. And I know that the social housing sector does do a fantastic job of helping people to move on with their lives, to move off benefits and move into employment. But I do think we have to be honest about that cohort of tenants who are on benefits and likely to remain on benefits for at least a little while. And for those, a furnished tenancy is ideal. It offers them everything they need, as well as the peace of mind of knowing that when it needs replacing, it's covered. The cost-benefit analysis study I mentioned earlier also looked at furnished tenancies and found that they provide significant returns to the tenant, at the very least cost neutral for the landlord, and it doubles the state investment. So I've said furnished tenancies, they're not right for every tenant, but they can be an ideal solution for some. The cost of the furniture is paid for through the service charge element of universal credit, so the landlord recoups their costs. For a single person, for example, the typical charge is about £20 per week. but of course the tenant isn't paying that. The benefits are just as if they rented a furnished property in the private rental sector, the rent would likely be higher, which would be covered by benefits. In fact, actually, some existing furnished tenancy schemes say up to 10% of their furnished tenancy tenants are actually in employment and pay the service charge themselves. They just find it more convenient. But they're very much in the minority. The majority are on benefits, and those benefits cover those furniture costs. And we think there's a really persuasive argument for social landlords to provide furnished tenancies beyond the benefits of wanting to help their tenants, which I know is so important. But those better living conditions for tenants can reduce turnover. Tenancies can end for all sorts of reasons, but having a furnished home can make a really big difference. And those sustained tenancies mean sustained rental income and therefore reduced void costs as well. And tenants won't have had to turn to high cost credit to acquire items, so it can reduce rental arrears too. Furnished tenancies can make hard to let properties more attractive, help to compete with the private rental sector and make allocations easier. And those longer tenancies can create more sustainable communities, which can have an impact on safety, reduced crime and better living standards. And in fact, those with long-running furnished tenancy schemes tell us that they can also generate a surplus, which can be then reinvested to expand the scheme or to provide support for tenants in other ways. And here are some of the benefits for the tenant. They're moving into a home, not an empty box. They've got all the items they need and that peace of mind of knowing that everything's covered. They've got somewhere comfortable to sleep, somewhere safe to store their food and to cook it, somewhere to sit and relax and invite family and friends into their home. Tenants in furnished properties are more likely to engage with support services. So health visitors, social workers, housing officers. As I've said, you're far more likely to invite someone into your home if you've got a sofa for them to sit on. And tenants won't build up unmanageable debt trying to furnish it themselves or turn to loan sharks or doorstep lenders. Far from being a poverty trap, providing somebody with a furnished tenancy, which is something that some landlords have expressed concerns about, they allow tenants to move forward with their lives, to get into a position where they can lift their head and start thinking about next steps, looking at training and employment opportunities. And providing furniture in this way doesn't just have to be for new tenants. There are more traditional furnished tenancies made at the start of a tenancy where you're furnishing the property and not the tenant. But there are also furniture rental agreements, addendums or variations to tenancy agreements where you're furnishing the tenant. So those furniture rental agreements can be used for existing tenants and even for tenants who only need one or two items. Gen 2 in the Northeast, they offer furniture rental agreements in this way to their tenants, for example. There are different options when it comes to acquiring the furniture too. The capital route means the landlord buys the furniture and then looks to recoup that capital outlay, usually over 3 to 5 years. And to set the service charge, you would factor in your capital costs and then an element for repairs and replacements, and then your admin costs. We've produced a blueprint for furniture provision in social housing on our website. It's freely available. It has lots of guidance in there of the things you need to think about when it comes to setting up a furnished tenancy scheme. There's also a detailed spreadsheet where you can look at the different financial models as well as expected returns. Once that 3 to 5 year period is up and you've recouped that capital cost, you continue to claim the service charge because you're providing an ongoing service. Some landlords offer fixed renewal programs for furniture and others replace it as and when required. With the rental route, the landlord rents the furniture from a provider, supplies it to the tenant, and then the landlord can still add on an admin element to the service charge. So there's no capital outlay, but be aware there will be less surplus in the long term for the landlord. Some landlords I know do have concerns about an ongoing rental service and ongoing rental charges, but you're paying for that ongoing service. So all those repairs and replacements, for example. And just as a tenant wouldn't rent a property and expect to own it after 20 years because they will have had perhaps a new boiler, new windows, new roof, whatever, it's exactly the same model. Whether you go down the capital route or the rental route, you can allow tenants to return items to reduce their service charge should their circumstances change, if they come off benefits, for example. But that is more common with rental agreements because you don't have to worry about the capital return. And providing furniture to tenants who need it, some of the added benefits here from some of the landlords that we spoke to associated with the tenants' improved financial stability. So those reduced rental arrears, tenancy sustainability. We can see here Citizen reduced their churn from 30 to 50%. 13 Group have had some really impressive returns. So their rental arrears fell from by 30% from 7 million to 4.8 million. And they say their void costs reduced by an average of £500 per property, because they say tenants looked after the properties better because they were given a home and not an empty box. Onward Homes, they've said that they think their void costs average at £8,000 to £10,000 per property. So they've been providing a group of particularly vulnerable tenants with a gifted package of furniture, which was £4,000 a package. They say it was still saving them money because it was still cheaper than the voids. This was a group of tenants who usually have a high failure rate for those tenancies, and they found their sustainment rate stayed around 97.6%. So really, really hard. They're now moving on to introduce furnished tenancies as well, though, in addition, through Furniture Flex. So I'll just tell you about Furniture Flex. In order to support landlords as much as we could, we've worked with our colleagues in FRC, our sister charity, to develop a new way for landlords to procure the furniture. So we spoke to so many landlords over the years about furniture provision, about the concerns and the barriers and the issues that they have. So Furniture Flex has been specifically designed to overcome, hopefully, all of those barriers. So landlords who are worried about having the capital funding to start up a scheme can go down the rental route, so they can rent the furniture, so it requires no capital outlay. Those who are worried about tenants whose circumstances may change if they move off benefits can be reassured the tenants can simply return the items and the service charge is removed within a week. So they can return the items one by one as they save up enough, or they can return them all in one go. Fears of an admin burden have been alleviated by an enhanced support package offered, including a really simple landlord-tenant online portal to manage the furniture packs, although, of course, tenants can use the phone as well. We understand many tenants are in digital poverty, so phone calls are still available. Tenants can be offered a single item all the way up to a full furniture package and everything in between, and it's for new and existing tenants. And if a landlord raises a fresh concern, a fresh barrier that we haven't thought of, we'll go away and do what we can to adapt the scheme, to amend it, to deal with that as well. The key here is flexibility. The key here is ending furniture poverty. And the last point on this slide, it's a sentiment I've genuinely heard so many times as we've introduced Furniture Flex to landlords. You know, it's a no-brainer. There are some possible quick wins, though. We've been lobbying landlords as a starting point to leave good quality flooring in place for incoming tenants. The majority rip it out, something which those outside the sector find horrifying and wasteful, as do we. We know there are at least 1.2 million people living without flooring, and 61% of those live in social housing. One social housing tenant said to me, it's cement downstairs and upstairs it's wood and not lots of nails sticking out. It's a hazard. It's really not ideal. I have a young child. So we want landlords to look at their policies and start leaving any decent flooring in them. Ideally, follow 13 Group's excellent example and install flooring in all relets. I did meet with the Decent Home Standard policy team a couple of weeks ago. They're seriously looking at flooring in the new standard. So I'm confident that it's coming. We're hopeful that it's coming. Living without flooring is uncomfortable. It means your home's less energy efficient and insulated. It can be dangerous for families with young children, elderly people, or those with disabilities. It can create noise issues in flats. So for a start, where possible, clean flooring and leave it in place for incoming tenants. We've also got case studies with landlords providing flooring that we're sharing across the sector to highlight the benefits, again, for the tenant and landlord, to encourage them to do more. We know that the small minority of grant-giving charities that provide flooring, well, first of all, we know there's very few of them, but we also know that most of their applications come from social housing tenants. We would also ask landlords to leave window coverings in too, where appropriate. So these may be much lower cost for the tenant, but there's still a cost which could still be unaffordable for some. Plus, tenant requires, tools and some skills to install. So all of this work is part of a national campaign that we're running called Make a House a Home. So we're meeting with, I've met with lots of MPs. I've got a drop-in event for MPs next week. We've got over 30 MPs and a couple of Lords coming and a minister or two. We're speaking to policymakers to ask for that 10% target, 10% of social homes to be let as furnished, to be mandatory. I've met with Rushanara Ali, the Homeless Minister in MHCLG, to talk about including this in the Decent Home Standard. And as I say, when I met with the Decent Home Standard Policy Review team about flooring, I did turn the conversation to furnished tenancies as well. Full details of the campaign are on our website. So all of those of you today who work for a social landlord, do get in touch with us. We're here to help you look at setting up a scheme. We can introduce you to Furniture Flex, or we can just help you explore it and have a general conversation. It's all free. It's what we're here to do. And if there's anyone on here who works with a social landlord, just introduce me to them and I'll have that conversation with them. We also do have 2 live surveys at the moment to find out what support is available for survivors of domestic abuse. We've got one for organisations and support workers and one for survivors. Be very grateful if that's relevant for anyone here today to have a look at that and fill it in. I'll pop the links in the chat. And we're planning to hold a roundtable event on this in Parliament in May. So the links to everything I've talked about today are here, which you probably can't see, but everything's on the website, or just email me. I'll put my email address in the chat as well. On our website as well, we've got a local welfare assistance finder. So we've got direct links to every local authority, local welfare scheme where one exists, of course. And we've also got links to Household Support Fund offers as well. So that's it from me.
Great, thank you, Claire. I was just kind of wondering while you were talking, in terms of sometimes slightly kind of specialised kind of furniture, like kind of higher chairs and things might be required. Can you provide those as well?
They would typically be, I would need to speak to my colleagues in Furniture Flex, but I think they would, I mean, they're certainly all available through FRC, which is our not-for-profit charity. But I think, you know, let's have a conversation if anyone's interested in particular items, because I do appreciate sometimes specialist items are required. We can look at it.
Yeah. And is it just social landlords you work with, or is it kind of potential for private landlords as well?
It's challenging with private landlords because we find that they tend to set their rents at as high as they possibly can. So there tends not to be a headroom to put that service charge on. Now, the way it works, because obviously, you know, we're a charity, we're not doing it to make money. It just needs to sort of wash its face, as it were. But we don't work with tenants. You know, we have to the arrangement with FRC is with the landlord. I know that they would be happy to have a conversation with a private landlord who owned, you know, a certain number of properties to have that conversation. But I know that in the past, the issue has normally been their rents tend to be too high to accommodate it with benefit caps and
absolutely. And so in terms of kind of areas of the country, are you kind of working nationally? Or are there kind of particular areas where you kind of find landlords are more receptive to this type of approach?
We're finding landlords are becoming more and more receptive across the UK. So I'm based up in Liverpool. We've got a base, FRC have got a base in Oldham and over in North Tyneside in the northeast as well. But we are just about to start furnished tenancies with SNG, who've got, I think, about 84,000 properties across the south of England. You know, FRC's got customers all across the UK, and furnished poverty is absolutely a national campaign. So we know that people live in furniture poverty. We know from our extent of furniture poverty report that, you know, people, wherever there's poverty, there's furniture poverty. So it's an issue that exists absolutely across the UK. So yeah, and anywhere and everywhere.
Okay. And are there any kind of disincentives for landlords to take part? I mean, I think you said it was kind of a no-brainer. Is there anything that...
I think that we usually need someone with the drive and vision within an organisation to push it through, because it's something that a number of departments will be involved in. You know, it's not just the lettings team. It will be also, you know, finance, service charges a challenge. But absolutely not over, you know, absolutely can be overcome, has been proven by the organisations who are providing and are about to start providing furnished tenancies. And that's why we're doing what we can to make it as easy as possible. I personally think it's shocking that children are going to be going to bed on the floor tonight and families haven't got a cooker or a fridge. And if there's something which takes a little bit of a time for a landlord to work through that can solve that at no cost to them, then I do feel that it's something that they should be doing.
Great. Thank you, Claire. I can see there's a couple of questions in the chat if you're kind of happy to give a...
No, absolutely. FRC complies with all of the safety regulations. They are ranked suppliers on a number of public sector procurement frameworks, where obviously that ensures that, you know, absolutely everything is checked. So really conscious of Furniture's contract standard. Everything obviously has the relevant They hold all the warranties, absolutely, totally compliant with everything. So there's absolutely no concerns about that.
That's great. Thank Claire. Thanks for joining us again. Much appreciated.
Thank you. I'll pop some of those, my email address, etc., in the chat. So please do, if anyone wants to get in touch, drop me a line.
Great. Thank you.
Foundations Live.
Right, we'll move on to our final presenter of the day. So I'll welcome Alan Walker from Men Sheds. So tell us about Men in Sheds then, Alan.
Yes, well, good afternoon, and thank you for inviting us along this afternoon to tell you a little bit about a men's shed, or men's sheds. So what is a men's shed? It's typically a larger version of what lots of people have at the bottom of their garden. But importantly, they are safe spaces within the community for men to be able to get together, socialise, drink a lot of tea, eat a lot of biscuits, and generally have a good time together. Men typically don't talk in the same way as women do. And by that, I mean, women will go out and have a coffee and talk about lumps and bumps. Men will go down the pub and talk about the football and the cricket. But in a men's shed environment where they're working shoulder to shoulder and not looking at each other face to face, which I think tends to be the barrier, men will open up and start talking about the lumps and bumps. Men's sheds are typically for the older male. Men typically work in group type environments in offices or on sites, factories, etc. Get to an age, retire, and then it's, what am I going to do? Four walls. And a men's shed provides that safe environment for men to continue that sort of male socialising that we need. So how did it all start? Well, men's sheds started in a place called Tongola in Victoria in Australia in 1998. Although I think there was discussion of sheds a little bit before that, back to the 80s. Started by a nurse, and it was the nurse that identified this thing that men don't talk. Came to the UK probably about 15 years ago now, and within the UK there's now over 1,000 men's sheds dotted around the country, probably over 10,000 shedders as we're called. My particular experience, retired 8 years ago, thought this is great, put my feet up, relax. Wife had other ideas, of course. But then I saw a thing about men's sheds in the local area, and I'd never heard of men's sheds. And it was, well, what's that? And I sort of looked it up and thought, oh, that's handy. Big workshop, getting yourself hands on, big toys and equipment, and get to use it as and when I need. And I went to the meeting and realised that actually it wasn't about being able to get my hands on a table saw or bandsaw when I needed it. There was a bigger picture surrounding male mental health, which is the main, the main driver. Came away from that meeting having had a conversation with one of our local parish councillors, who said that they would support the setting up of a men's shed. But we'd have to do it, and I drove back for 15 minutes asking myself all sorts of questions like, ever set up a charity? No. And every question I asked myself, the answer was no, I've never done it. But I decided it was worth a go because of this bigger picture of the mental health issue. And I started my shed, Church Crookham and Fleet men's shed. It took us about 4 months to get it going. Lots of support from the parish council. We've been going 7, 8 years now, and have grown rapidly from half a dozen people. We're now up at 66 members, and such was the demand that actually last year we started a second men's shed in the area. It's got 42 members, so kind of indicates the need. COVID was a big issue because we had to close, and we got lots of requests about, when are you going to open, can we join. Lots of guys recognised the need for something, and I guess that was because they were locked up indoors or in the back garden. We ended up with quite a long waiting list, which so what we did was we were fortunate to have access to another property that we were able to start this second men's shed. So guys, come along. There's no pressure to talk. There's no pressure to do anything. We jokingly say to new members that the only skill they need is to be able to boil the kettle and make a cup of tea. They're informal spaces. There's no pressure to work on anything. What do we do? Well, the majority of men's sheds are woodworking biased. Some have bicycle repair shops, some have guitar clubs, some have arts and crafts clubs. But in the main, I would say typically they're woodwork based. And members are free to work on projects of their own, or as we do at Church Crookham, we try to do a lot of community projects. So we get lots of requests from scout groups, guide groups, local infants, primary schools, to make or repair excuse me, items for them. And it's a great way of being able to put stuff back into the community. We don't charge for the labour, we only charge for materials where they have to be purchased for a particular project. But if we can do it with materials that have been donated to us, then we will. Say over 1,000 men's sheds in the UK now. The UK Men's Shed Association website has got a find a shed. There's almost certainly going to be one relatively near to you in the area. There's lots of things that say that sheds do. The main thing is providing a safe space, a place to talk, and that's been certainly proved to us. One of our very first members was a guy that, I guess it's probably fair to say, he'd lost a lot of confidence in himself. He wasn't particularly old, he was in his early 40s. He'd been in the Navy, in the Gulf, been shot at, left the Navy, trained as an electrician, and had a stroke. He just had the stuffing knocked out of him, basically. But over a period of about a month, he started to open up and talk. And I guess one of the sad things is we don't see him very often now. But that's because the shed helped him build his confidence, and he was able to go out and get himself a job. And to me, that's a great success story. But we've also had members that have gone through cancer. One of our members had prostate cancer, had the operation, had it removed, and then when another guy came in and said that he'd been diagnosed with the same thing, they were able to have several chats. Second guy made the same decision. But he came in, one of the things that after the operation, he came in and said one of the things that really helped him was the ability to chat quietly in a safe space and discuss his particular problems and how he felt. And again, I think that that shows that sheds work.
Yep. So I had a couple of questions come in as well, Alan. So what's is kind of a formal referral process, or how do kind of people find you, and or how do you find?
I think most sheds have a Facebook page or a website. You can look up the UK Men's Shed Association website, find a shed to find a shed in your local area and contact details. We get inquiries virtually weekly from people saying, seen it, like the idea, how do I join? So I'm just looking at the questions. How do you find men who may? We don't tend to look. We don't tend to go out looking for members. Members find us. We've had one or two referrals from social prescribers, but in my area, not a great deal of that. Most is people that see what we do, like the idea and want to contribute to putting something back into the community, whilst having this safe environment to chat in. Our Thursday group, we're open 5 days a week. Our Thursday group, I jokingly call the Thursday Eating Club. They start at 12 o'clock. One or two of them fancy themselves as Gordon Ramsay or whatever the other bloke, Jamie Oliver, make pork pies and cakes, and they sit out the back in the summer. And we're fortunate that we've got a patio area, and they sit out the back and eat pie and eat cake and have a cup of tea, and it gets to 2 o'clock and somebody says, well, I suppose we ought to go and do something. And somebody said, well, let's have a cup of tea first. And then 4 o'clock looking time comes and nobody's picked it all up. And I've done it. I've sat there, spent many an hour talking, and I've got home and my wife has said to me, what have you done? Well, I didn't do anything. We sit out the back and had a cup of tea and chatted. What did you talk about? No idea. I haven't got a clue. But I've come home feeling great, feeling energised. No idea what we're spoken about, but that doesn't matter. It's that socialising and
Yes,
in a safe environment.
absolutely.
How's the shed funded? Most sheds have a membership fee. That tends to vary. Ours is an annual fee of £96 a year, so £8 a month. But for £8 a month, we're open 5 days a week, typically 4 hours a day. So it's less than a cup of coffee a week. But to me, as chairman of Church Crookham, yes, the membership fee is important. We have to fund the place. It costs us about £6,000 a year to run, with electricity and rubbish removal, etc. But if somebody came to me and as a potential member and said, I can't afford it, I would waive it. 96 quid a year is not worth somebody going home and doing something stupid.
Yeah.
But in the main, some charge less per year, but then charge so much per visit. To me, that is just a lot of admin, because you've got to monitor who comes in and when they come in. Far simpler to have a one-off fee. And then the projects, so a community project, depending on what it is, we will ask them to cover the cost of materials and make a donation towards their running costs if they can. Some organisations can and they do. Some organisations just can't and they just cover the cost of materials. And again, to me, that's fine, because making a mud kitchen for a preschool might have occupied 3 guys for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And while those guys have been doing that, they've been talking. And who knows what they might have shared amongst themselves, and how one making a comment might have helped somebody else. We go back to the guys with prostate cancer. Our local Lions group do an annual blood test screening for prostate cancer. And we were sat out the back, Thursday evening club, and somebody said, "Oh, I see the Lions are doing their blood test." And one of the guys went, "Yeah, I did that last year." He said, "Got the amber letter." And it went quiet for a minute. And he was, "Well, are you all right?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "I'm fine." He said, "I went and had some further tests and it was a bit of a red herring." He said, I'm perfectly okay." 5 people signed up that night. One of them got the results and had the red letter. But called it early.
Yeah.
Had the operation, was perfectly okay. And that's kind of what it's about.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us this afternoon, Alan, and kind of sharing details of Men Sheds. We'll kind of put in the chat the links if anybody wants to get in touch, and we'll hopefully catch up with you again in the future, and be great. Yeah, great to share some more stories from the sheds.
Yeah.
Okay. Or even the kitchens and the patios and the barbecues. Great. Thanks, Alan.
Thanks.
So, thank you to all our speakers this afternoon. So I've heard about weeding sheds and furniture. So hopefully you've kind of taken something away there that you'll find useful in your local area. Coming up, as kind of mentioned, we've got the FG Summit. Tickets have just gone live for July the 8th in Birmingham. We'll be looking at high-cost adaptations. We'll have more foundations live coming up, and we're just looking at the topics and the dates, because there's quite a lot going on at the moment. So we're just trying to keep up and make sure that we give you the kind of the appropriate news at the appropriate time. But definitely got more foundations live coming up. As always, we'll send you a little email after we've closed today, where you can give your feedback, and also you get your CPD certificate if you include your email address, or you can go to foundations.uk.com/webinar feedback. So I think that wraps us up for the day. Thank you for joining us, and hope to see you again next time. Thank you.